All right, let's get started. First, I'd like to welcome everybody to our very first in a series that we're calling Wake Up with YPN. Thank you guys for joining us, whether you're on Facebook Live or Zoom. I'm Joe Malone, the YPN 2020 chair for the Greater Hartford Association of Realtors, and today we're super excited to have joining with us our 2020 2020 president of the Connecticut Association of Realtors, Ms. Joanne Breen. She'll be with us in just a moment. Just want to make a couple of announcements real quick before we kind of get started here. First and foremost, I want to make sure that you guys mark your calendars for our next Wake Up with YPN event. That's going to be on June 3rd at 9 a.m. Again, that's June 3rd at 9 a.m. I believe that's a Wednesday. Just mark that down. What we're going to be doing is featuring a tech talk with our very own Alexa Caballo-Hughes. Whether you're tech savvy or not, definitely don't want to miss that event. She's an excellent speaker, and you're bound to get at least a few pieces of information that you might not have already known. Also, real quick, if at any point you have any questions for Joanne, anything comes up that you think of, please type it into the chat, whether you're on Facebook Live or Zoom, and we'll get around to asking them right at the end. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our another fellow YPN member and our sponsor for today, Mr. Chris Cedillo. He's a senior loan officer at North Point Mortgage, and just like to say a few words, and then he'll pass it along to Joanne. All right, so thanks again for joining us. Chris, take it away.
Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate it. And again, you had mentioned I'm a YPN member. I've been on the YPN for a couple of years now. Certainly have enjoyed the experience. I've met a lot of great people through that. Basically, just wanted to reiterate, obviously, we're all going through a crazy time these last couple of months. You've all seen your lenders communicate out to you, trials, the tribulations, doomsday, this, that. I can assure you that probably at this point in time, it is the most stable it has been for underwriting right now in the mortgage world. Things are starting to slowly come back down to normal. Certainly there's going to be those few niche products out there like self-employed borrowers, staffing agency type situations that are still going to be a little bit of trouble or get creative to get done. I can't stress this enough. Job right now is the new FICO. So time in the industry, time at your employer really, really is going a long way right now for a lot of folks out there. So if you have any questions for me in the lending capacity, feel free to ask them at the end of the chat. And it is my great pleasure to introduce a friend, a colleague, and someone who opened her door to me 16 years ago as I was knocking on it with some stale cookies and donuts. Your president for 2020, Ms. Joanne Breen.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I wasn't unmuted. I want to thank you, Chris, for the lovely introduction, and thank you, YPN, for having me here today. For those of you that know me well, you know I'm a real people person, so remote meetings are not the way I'd like it to be, but this is the way the world is now. So happy to be here. I guess I wanted to give you just a little bit of background. And many of you have probably seen the papers that we've been sending out, the notices from CTR. Probably this year more than ever, there's been more interaction with the state association, primarily because of the pandemic. But I think in a way it's a good thing because it's setting a new standard even for us at the association. This constant communication, I think, is a great thing. So just to give you an idea of what we've been working on, if you haven't seen the videos or some of the notices that have come out, as you know, we had a webinar last week, well, earlier this week, I guess it was Monday, with the Department of Labor, answering a multitude of questions about the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Act and problems that people are having trying to apply for some kind of compensation. If you missed the webinar, if you have more questions, that is on our site. So if you go to CTR's site, you will see that there's a red line right at the top of ctrealtors.com. It's a link right to the coronavirus page. We have a dedicated website for that. And on that page is anything to do with guidance that's come out of CTR, information about programs at NAR that are available to you as a member, plus information and the webinar link for the Department of Labor webinar. So, and if you still have questions, there are places where you can email us, and we're keeping in touch with the state. We've been in touch with the Department of Labor and the Department of Economic and Community Development consistently since the beginning of this pandemic. And as many of you know, or maybe you don't realize, initially in Connecticut, when the governor shut down the state, we were not on the list of essential services. So for a brief period in time, we were shut down as well. CTR worked literally round the clock for 2 or 3 days that I don't even remember because it was a blur. Putting together, we actually sat down and wrote every part of the real estate transaction that is essential, as well as our part in it, along with our affiliated businesses like mortgage lenders like Chris and home inspectors, and the need for the state to consider us as essential. At that moment, our biggest concern was the pending transactions that literally would not have been able to close. We were very, very fortunate when the governor deemed us essential and left it really open to us as an industry to determine on our own what type of guidance we would provide to our members. And that's why we put out guidance to all of you on what we felt was important to act responsibly and yet still conduct business in a safe way for us and for the public that we deal with. So I'm going to bring up something, and then I'm sure we may get questions. We've been getting a lot of questions this week about open houses. Some agents thought that since the governor was opening up the state next week, that would be a signal for CTR to change our guidance on open houses. In the end, whether or not an agent does an open house is really the business of the company they belong to. Every broker manager has the right to set a policy within their own company. But CTR as an organization has the responsibility to take a stand on certain things that we feel are representative of the industry. And one of the stands we took, the executive committee voted several weeks ago, urging everyone not to do public or broker open houses, physical, actual open houses at this time. And we are not changing our guidance on that, not yet. We feel it's too early. It's still, we feel, too risky for the agents and their clients. So that is still going to remain the position of Connecticut Realtors. And just to move on to something else aside from that, I did want to mention, I know one of the things the committee asked me to mention was some of the education that's available to all of you right now, and some of the guidance even coming out of National Association. You'll find links to all of that as well on the CTR page, the coronavirus page. And there's something called Right Tools, Right Time that if you're looking for, if you have time and you're looking to get designations, they're offering designations for 50% off, or even in some cases for free. There are all types of classes. There are classes on financial wellness, how to plan for situations like this when your income is impacted by external situations. So those are just the things that are available to you that I wanted to mention so that you could avail yourselves of that. And other than that, CTR will continue to put out guidance to all of you and try to be as helpful as we can, and encouraging you to really make use of those virtual tools that the Smart MLS has also made available to you. And with that, I guess I'll just hand it back to Joe and see if there are any questions for me.
Okay. Thanks, Joanne. Thank you. Appreciate all that information. Just muted there for a second. Now we're just going to take a second just to check the chats, see if anybody has any questions that you'd like to present to Ms. Joanne. Let's see. I don't see anything on the Zoom chat. Sasha, you seeing anything on the Facebook Live one?
No, there are no questions on the Facebook Live. Just one comment that Joanne is doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. I will mention one more thing that I listened to I was part of a meeting earlier this week with NAR with some really interesting statistics for us to know as realtors moving forward. We heard from a psychologist who specializes in studying demographics. Her name is Dr. Jessica Lautz, and what she said was that I guess nationwide only 2%, only 10% of the pending transactions that were in play when this whole thing hit actually fell apart because of the pandemic. Only 10%. So that's not too bad. The other thing that she said that I thought was really interesting was that what they're finding now is that typically last year realtors were showing approximately 9 properties before a buyer would make a decision to buy. This year it's 3. So that's sort of, I loved hearing that. As a realtor out in the field, that's a great thing. What I think what's happened, of course, is people are really using the virtual tools and they're narrowing down the search and really only going into those homes that have a high interest for them. So that's a good thing. The other thing she said is she believes, I know earlier we were talking before the webinar started, we were discussing what's the future going to be? Is our spring market going to be coming? I think Chris said he feels it'll be showing up more in August, and he may be right. But one of the trends that they're seeing nationwide is that there is going to be a bigger move to the suburbs. People are becoming very conscious of the advantage of having yard space, not just for family entertainment and exercise, but also for things like having your own vegetable garden. Because people going into grocery stores not finding the produce that they want are beginning to say, you know what, I could have grown this. If I had a yard, I could have my own vegetable garden and wouldn't be subjected to that. So those are some of the trends. The other thing she said is she believes there'll be a lot of movement in the housing market with people realizing the need for space in their home for 2 home offices. Now that a lot of people that are working from home, and there's more than one working from home, they just don't have the space for 2 offices. So I think the way our lifestyles have changed because of this is going to impact the way people are evaluating the space they're in now and what they really need moving forward. So I think that was all good news for us as realtors. I think it's a bright future for us as far as the way this year will end up.
Definitely, that's some really good information, and I think everybody can attest to that's okay with having a shorter amount of houses that we have to show before somebody.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
I personally, I actually had a question. When you were talking about the website, Right Tools, Right Time, which that's the first I've actually heard of that. Does that cover pretty much every designation, like especially ones that you traditionally really had to be in person, or you had to take multiple, 8 hours or what have you?
I looked at a couple. I know that it does ePro. I know that it also covered At Home with Diversity was another designation that they offered. You'd have to go on it, Joe. I'm not sure what all of them were. And then I was sort of floating all over the place looking at different things that would interest different people. There were webinars on virtual marketing tools, as I said, financial information on how to plan your finances, set up for self-employment, SEP accounts for yourself, to plan for retirement. There was just a huge amount of information on this.
Awesome. Okay, definitely have to check it out.
Yep.
Looks like I think we do have a question. Let's see. Joanne, don't know if you can answer this. If you receive unemployment and then get a commission check, how do you handle that?
You have to, if you're receiving unemployment, from my understanding, you have to report every week any income. So you would definitely want to report it. And one of the questions we had on the webinar the other day was, when did you receive it? Is it the date that the check was dated or the date you put it into your account? And to err on the side of caution, we're telling people, go by the date that the check was issued to you. because some people will sit with a check on their desk for 2 months, but the date you receive that commission is the date the check was issued. So yes, that from what I understand, that's the way you would report it every week. When I think every Sunday you have to continue to report anything that's happened during the past week as far as any income you may have received.
I have a quick question, guys. Are you seeing an issue with getting people in the trades out to your properties, out to your listings for repairs or appointments?
I've had not much trouble with that. When this really first hit, I had a couple of properties that needed a lot of repairs to be made before we could do before we could close. And I was able to get people out there. The biggest issue I had was with a couple of them, I had to really drive home the point that they needed to put on the gloves that I had in my car for them and, put the mask on. So they weren't too happy, a couple of them, but they did, they complied. So no, other than that, I hadn't had any trouble getting contractors out.
It's good news.
I don't know if others have, but so far I'm finding that they are coming out. And again, the contractors, most of them were deemed essential as well, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, so they are able to work.
That's good news.
I was gonna say, we actually have a couple of Facebook questions now, if you don't mind answering them. So let's see. Someone mentioned the breaking news about NAR with the PPP program. Can you clarify that?
Breaking news? I'm not sure. The PPP program is the Payroll Protection Plan, which is part of the CARES Act. So all I do know about that is that you can apply, it's a loan, and you have to work with a local bank to get that. And and I know people that have applied for it and are receiving funds, but it is a loan. It's not a gift. I think there's part of the EIDL part of it. There was a grant if you went for that as well. But the payroll protection is a loan, and you have to have employees, and they have to be getting paid by you for you to be eligible to get the loan, because it's specifically to keep them getting paid. That's all I know about it. I don't know if that answered the question.
Now, there's also another question. Do you have any further updates on the partnership with NAR and telehealth?
All I know about, no, I do know that they extended the date that you could apply to May 31st. Here's all I know about it. I know people that already belong to this program, and they said it's great. I guess the way you can use it is if you're just, if you have sort of a normal medical condition, asthma problems, a rash, or the common cold, and you just want to talk to a doctor, they're available 24/7. They have like 2,300 board certified physicians that are available to talk to you. There's a hotline that's open 24 hours a day, and they will prescribe for you. They'll prescribe medication over the phone. So that's available for free for 2 months from the date that you sign up, and you have until May 31st. And then NAR has negotiated a reduced cost. I'm not sure what it normally was. I think it was something like maybe $12 a month. They've gotten it reduced to $7 a month for any NAR member that wants to continue on with the program beyond the 2 free months.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
And from what I understand, it works really, really well. The people that use it love it. So I would give it a try. You've got 2 months for free.
Great.
Anything else on Facebook?
Let's see, I'm looking through it. Can members receive both PPP and PUA? Do you know?
I believe so. But again, there's a whole list of Q&As. If you go to the ctrealtors.com page and go on that coronavirus site, we've put a whole list of Q&As there for you. And also, if you go to NAR's site, they have, but I think we link to that too. So you should find everything on our site, but NAR also has an entire list of questions and answers regarding that. I believe you can apply for both.
Okay, good to know. You already kind of answered this question while you were talking, but what advice or resources could you point us towards so that we as realtors may best utilize our downtime to further educate ourselves?
I think right now I'm probably preaching to the choir here for anyone that's part of a YPN webinar, but I feel, especially because we're trying to limit the number of people going into homes and really still suggesting that you not do, well, more than suggesting, we're urging you not to do physical open houses. I think now's the time to get totally comfortable and really astute at using every possible virtual tool and digital tool that is available to us as realtors. If you're not comfortable doing the Zoom meeting and being the person who's controlling or conducting it, I would learn how to do it, because I know realtors are using that now to get online with their clients and have the serious discussions we used to have face-to-face in the office. You know, that first, I used to call them counseling sessions when I would train my realtors in my office. And, you know, that first appointment with the seller, when you're trying to find out what it is they really want to accomplish and what their expectations are. And the same thing with the buyer. That can all be done on Zoom now. So I think getting really comfortable with all of these digital and virtual tools is most important right now. And I have to put in a plug, or our regional vice president for NAR will chop my head off. If you haven't done the C2EX certification through NAR, that's something, I'm working on it right now myself. I'm almost done. Now's a really good time to do that too. It really takes you through all of the information that any realtor should really be well versed on, making sure that you know what you should know. And sometimes it's surprising what you thought you knew and didn't. So I would strongly encourage people to do that.
Okay, great. Well, that was pretty much all the questions on Facebook. Does anyone else on Zoom have any questions?
No, Chris, you had another question, right?
Yeah, just real quick. We started to chat about this before we started this this morning. And Joanne, for your office in particular, just into a rough estimate percentage-wise, you know, we're starting to heat up on the phones as mortgage officers with new buyers, which is a great sign. But what's the percentage of your listings or your potential sellers that are telling you they're holding off or they're waiting or I want to see what happens? Like, you know, is it a larger number than anticipated right now, or are a lot of people really getting on board with now is the time to sell?
I think more people, I would say in the last 2 weeks, more people are now getting on board with, I'm getting my house ready, I want to get it on. I know that's happening with me personally, and I believe it's happening within our office as well. That's what I'm hearing when we have our weekly meetings. So I mentioned earlier too, it is a little bit regional. Down in Fairfield County, they are just off the charts with the amount of business that's coming into them right now. The shoreline's very busy, a lot of people coming out of New York City. And as you mentioned, Chris, you're getting calls from agents in, whether it's somebody mentioned Glastonbury, all over the state, where there are a lot of people coming out of New York City that are realizing the advantages that Connecticut now has to offer. And I'm going to give another plug because this leads me right into it. If you haven't seen on television or heard on radio, right now, Connecticut Realtors is running a media campaign with WTNH, Channel 8, and iHeartMedia, and it's on Facebook and all the social sites. It's called Home Safe Home. And we're running this because we're trying to really put out two messages. One is that there really is business out there. People are still out there wanting to buy and wanting to sell because we're seeing that. And the other thing is that as realtors, we have the tools and the knowledge to get people through this process in a safe way, given the conditions we're working in right now. But we're to answer your question, yeah, we're starting to see, you know, there was more of a lull, I would have said in April, we saw more people saying at that point, I'm going to wait a little bit. But once May began, that started to change. And I think we're going to see more houses. I hope more houses coming on the market. We're definitely getting called by more buyers.
Well, that's really good news. That's good to hear. Does anybody else have anything else? All right. Anything else that you'd like to add, Joanne? And let me say thank you very much. This has been invaluable information, I think, for all of us.
Oh, you're welcome. No, I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. I just, I want to thank everybody who is watching this for being out there. When we talk about people on the front line, as far as I'm concerned, we're part of the group that's on the front line, because we've been out there through this whole thing, doing what we needed to do to get our sellers and buy. I mean, there were people when this first started, there were sellers and buyers, as there are no matter what's going on in the world, that were in dire need of selling a home, and buyers in dire need of buying a home. And there were realtors out there to assist them no matter what. So I want to thank you all for doing that, because I think the real estate community stepped up and did what it had to do, and we're still doing that. So we really appreciate that.
Definitely. Well, again, thank you so much, Joanne. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. It was great being here.
Definitely. Look forward to seeing you again, maybe sometime in the future. We're definitely going to try and do this more often, bring some more information to everybody and just keep everybody up to date.
Great.
Again, thank you again to Chris too, for sponsoring this and for your info. And thank you everybody for tuning in this morning. Just a quick reminder, we're going to do this again for our Tech Talk with Alexa Hughes on June 3rd at 9 in the morning. I know that's going to be a little early for myself, but I think we can make that, get back into a routine. So just mark your calendars, June 3rd. And again, thank you, and be safe, guys. Take care.
Take care.